Thanks very much for having me along. Hopefully I'll structure this in a way that makes some sense to you guys and is useful. As Gray mentioned just before the tea break, the world of project management is quite a vast one and can be quite a complicated one. Made that way largely by project management professionals who like to mystify the world and make it more complicated than it really is. What I've done in this little presentation is tried to pull out some of the key aspects that I think are important right across project space, whether they're small projects up to large ones that are relevant and are common throughout. The reality is most of it is pretty common, regardless of what industry you are or what projects you're in. A couple of little examples here that I found just recently that I thought quite apt for what some of the problems that I deal with on a day-to-day basis. Software world. Software world, 17% of software projects in the US meet the original targets. That's a pretty dooming state. So 50% must have their targets changed to be completed. So most of the time they're late or they're overspent or the performance criteria has to be changed. Probably the original intention of the project wasn't well understood either. The remaining 33 are cancelled. So as a total of that, 83% of all the software projects in the US are in trouble in one way or the other, which is a massive amount of money when you think about all of that effort and time and resource put into it. And the results-wise aren't flash. Construction and product. Construction and product development are actually very similar to software development and to each other. And this is a figure which is borne out from numerous surveys, but basically 30% of all the work in both of these fields is rework, and I'm sure you guys are pretty familiar with having to do things over and over and over again. Largely not our fault, someone else has stuffed up and we have to come and sort something out, and the reality is that 1 in every 3 people operating in most of our jobs is sorting out other people's errors. So again, a massive amount of time and money and effort and frustration is born out of these sorts of errors. Now, project managers would like to think that project management is the answer to all of this and we can sort out the problem. I guess the fact that these are still current statistics means we've got a way to go, but we proposition that where any efforts are there's a lot of journals out there and a lot of institutes. I'm a member of one, the Project Management Institute, which try and make this project management thing really complicated and talk about what it is. In my mind, it's pretty simple, really. Project management is everything you need to do to make a project a success. There's a whole heap of bits and pieces that go into that to help you along the way, processes and structures and formats and templates and project management software that can be a help or can be a hindrance, but they're there to help you in that process. But largely, project management is about finding out what the job really is and doing everything you can to make it a success rather than process-wise, whether they're big or small, most projects would benefit from running through a bit of a process as up on the screen here. Largely it's in 6 components, although the first 2 are often combined. And really, most of the problems that I encounter are with this first item, defining the problem. What is it you're actually trying to solve? A lot of the time you enter into a project and the problem's already been given to you, or you enter into enter into a situation where it is a whole heap of assumptions have been made about the problem and what the potential solution is. Fundamentally, you need to understand what the problem is to really come up with a successful project outcome. So if you look at the first identification of the problem and develop a number of alternate solutions, because there are always alternatives. When you guys were working last session with the problems that Graham had put in front of you on the scheduling exercise, you had a whole heap of different options in terms of what you were actually going to do and the way you were sequencing them together, who you might have them doing the time it would take, the cost it would result in. So there's always various options. That's the great thing about project work. There's never one right answer. There's always multiple ways of answering the same problem. Third component, plan the project. Fundamental to everything we do. And it's pretty simple, really, going through a set number of steps. What needs to be done, who will do it, how will it be done, when must it be done, how much will it cost, and what do we need to do it. If you break a project down into multiple parts, into small little chunk-sized bits, eating the elephant type of thing, it's really fun, really not that hard to really understand what it is to define a project in this way. You guys are probably dealing in small to medium-sized projects generally, where you can deal with things in hours and part days and days. We deal with that as well, but we also deal with things in months and quarters and years. So same thing's true, just breaking it down to a manageable chunk that you can put a decent estimate around. Fourth component, execute the plan. Well, that's probably some flash or more complicated wording than it really needs to be. Just do what you said you were going to do. Fifth bit's really critical, monitor and control progress. At best, what you came up with in your plan was an estimate or a guess or a series of guesses about how you might actually achieve this thing. Nothing ever goes to plan. Through experience and some trial and error, you get to be pretty good at the things you do over and over again, but there's always new components to every project. They're always unique and something's always going wrong, whether it's something you've done or something someone else has done, things change. So being able to monitor where you are against your original project plan and take action against it is where fundamentally project management comes in. And finally, closing the project. It sounds, pretty easy really. You finish the job, no big deal, have a beer or something and celebrate the thing. That's only part of it. Really, true project management, you need to learn from what you've done, take heed of the things that went right and wrong, and be able to take those forward into the next project. It's fundamental to be able to This is a bit of a funny diagram, but I thought for those who don't have a lot of project management knowledge, it's fundamental to understand that these aren't distinct series of work that you go through. Over time, the phases will change. At the start of the project, obviously, you're not executing anything and you're not closing the project, and at the end, you're not starting the project. But through the midst of it, there are always various components of the project, processes that you need to address. Throughout everything, monitoring and controlling how well you're doing. At the start of the project, more emphasis on planning, but because things change, you're always planning throughout the job up until almost the last day. And obviously executing wise, you're not doing an awful lot at the start, and then a lot of effort comes in once you've got your plan formalised. But there's an awful lot of overlap between them. A lot happens in the midst of a project where you are replanning, executing as you're going, monitoring, and getting ready to meet that final milestone. What's managed in project management? Some of the ones on the list here you're probably pretty familiar with. Scope, what is it you're actually trying to do? Time, how long you got to do it? What's it going to cost, and what sort of quality level are people after? There's a whole heap of other ones as well. People management is massive in project management, as are communications and risk. Procurement, that's both buying something initially and managing the contract throughout that process. And integration, which basically means how do you stitch all of this stuff together and make a coherent answer out of the end of it. And over all of it, managing change. As I said before, things are always changing, and whether it's because your initial assumptions have changed or you didn't quite read it right, you need to be able to act on the information that's most relevant to you at the time and make those changes to reflect that. A diagram you may have seen previously, which